Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today we're going to be making a pillow. We're going to make a Sister's Choice pillow, and we're going to use a kit, but I will also give you the cutting directions. So the nice thing about this pattern, this is Sister's Choice, with just one block and one cut, you can move the pieces around so you could make the pillow 3 different ways. And I'm going to show you all 3 ways. So we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to get started sewing. I'm going to show you what size pieces we need and what colors to make the Sister's Choice block. That'll be our first step here. So my pieces are already cut, but we are making, basically it's a 5 by 5 block. So we're just going to have some corners, some half square triangles for the corners. And then, so we're going to do a piece here, a piece here, a piece here. So all the squares are going to be cut 2.5 inches. And the half square triangles, you have to cut them 2 7/8 so that when we sew on the diagonal, we will get 2 half squares that end up whole squares that are 2.5 inches. So let me show you what I mean here. So I've got these pieces already cut, but I'll show you what you need to have cut yourself. So these are the 2.5 inch squares. We've got a nice colorful group here. And then these are the 2 7/8 squares. Those are going to make the half square triangles. So we're going to mark the back of these, sew them onto here, and make our half square triangles. These are going to make the rest of the patchwork up. And then I'm going to put 2 borders on this. So once the block is done, we're going to put 2 borders around it. So my first border is cut 2 3/8 inches wide, and then the outer border is cut 1 7/8. And this will give us a pillow that's going to measure about 16 inches when it's all finished. So let's mark the back of these, and then we'll make our half square triangles. We need to draw a line on the back of our squares here. I just like to use a pencil. There's a lot of good marking tools. I'm just going to draw right from one corner to the next. So I'm just going to lightly pencil on here on the back of each of these light ones. Then we're going to stack these onto the purples, and we're going to sew on both sides of this line. So we're just going to stack these up just like this, take them to the machine, and sew on both sides of that line 1/4 inch away. Now my presser foot is 1/4 inch wide, so I'm going to put the edge of the presser foot right on the line and stitch straight down. And I'm just going to leave it on the machine and grab the next one. And I'm going to do that with all 4 of them. Now we'll just spin it around and sew on the other side. Same thing on this side. We're just riding right along that pencil line. Goes really fast. Now you can take these over to your cutting board and use your rotary cutter to cut them, but I just like to use some scissors because the sewing line is already really straight. So even if this isn't cut perfectly straight, it doesn't matter. So I'm just cutting right along the middle there. And I just find this is faster than getting the blade and the ruler back out. Now we're going to take these over to the ironing board and we are going to press them open. So see, since they're sewn along that, when we open them up, it makes a half square triangle. We are going to open these up. We're going to keep the seam allowance pressed towards the dark and just give them a good steam press. Now you can cut off the dog ears if you want. That's these little guys here. Some people like to trim those off. And I do if I'm doing a quilt with a lot of seams. But on one pillow, there's not going to be very much bulk. So I'm not even going to worry about those dog ears here. We've got the half square triangles now. They're the same size as all of our squares. So now everything is 2.5 inches. So we're going to make a 5 by 5 block patchwork here. All of these are going to go in the corners. So these are all going to go like this with one of these lights in the corner. So let's lay out all the corners. Now here is where we have options. These prints can fit in 3 different ways. So the first way we're going to do it is with a blue center, and we're going to surround that with the navy. So I like the blue next to the blue here. Then we're going to put this dark purple next to the dark blue. That looks really good. And this multicolored batik here is going to go in these corners. So this looks really good. I like the way the corners all kind of transition right into the points there. That looks really good. For this first option looks good, but now we're going to go with door number 2. So we're going to take the blue out and we're going to put the multicolored one in the middle this time. So we're using 4 of each piece. That's what you need to cut, is 4 of each piece. Now this time, let's put the burgundy right next to the center there. So we're just moving the pieces around, and we'll put the blue way on the outside here. This option makes a really nice cross in the middle of the pillow, which is good. And then we're going to add the blue here, the light blue. So my pillow is all cut in batiks, but you can do this in really any fabrics you like. That looks really good too. And let's try the third option. So the third option, let's put the navy in the middle. And let's put the burgundy in these corners right up next to those half square triangles. And let's see, let's put the multicolor here. Yeah, that looks good. And the light blue way out here. I think that's my favorite one, so I'm going to sew that one first. Now we're ready to sew this into a block. It's just a 5 by 5 block patchwork. You can make it row at a time and then sew the rows together, but I like to do it a little bit different because sometimes my rows get turned around and my pieces can get confused. So I am going to sew these 2 pieces together and I'm going to leave them on the machine. I'm going to chain piece. Still using my 1/4 inch seam, I'm just going to turn this piece over that and put it right down below this one. And this way everything stays connected while I'm sewing. And I don't have to worry about any of the pieces being turned the wrong way or getting a row upside down. Now we're not going to cut these pieces apart. We're just going to go back up to the top here, open up, and sew this piece on. So now we're going to add this whole row onto what we've already got, and we're going to continue on until the whole block is done. I've got all the rows sewn and they're attached together, which makes it easy to make sure that I don't have a row turned around or a piece turned the wrong direction. So I've got these finger pressed every other way, every other direction. So this one is pressed down, this one is pressed up, this one down, this one up. So that means this one's going to go down, and it naturally wants to go that way because the half square triangle has got a seam, so it wants to go that way. Then we're going to go up. So just pull the seam apart a little bit, make sure it's facing the way you want it to go, and just finger press with the back of your hand. So that step makes the next step easier, and it makes ironing it easier. So that's why I always finger press everything. So now we're going to sew these rows together. So start at the top, match everything up, and you do want to match every intersection there. So if you need to, you can snip apart that little trail of thread that goes between the squares so you can make sure you've got your pieces lined up. You can feel, because this seam allowance is going up, that one's going down, they nest right next to each other, so you can feel if they're close. So to match up these seams here, you might want to snip that thread, and then you can peel this back and you can see if those seams are lined up. And then we're going to want to stitch it a 1/4 inch, but you're going to want to go right to where that point is so you don't cut the point off of the tip of your triangle. Then just sew all the rows like that. Now we'll do the next one. We've got all the seams between the rows done here, and I'm going to finger press this one towards the middle because it makes it much easier to iron, and this one also goes towards the middle. Now this one's going to go, they're all going to go towards the middle, so this is going to go to the middle. Then we're going to take this over to the ironing board, and we're going to give it a really good steam pressing and make sure it's really flat and really, really square. We've got the block nicely ironed, so we are going to put on this 2 3/8 inch border all the way around, and then we are going to put on this 1 7/8 inch border all the way around, and then we'll put it on some batting. We might quilt it a little bit, and then we'll put the back on, and then the pillow will be done. So my pieces are extra long. I'm just going to sew it onto the edge and then trim off the excess. You want to use a careful seam allowance so you don't sew over the ends of your points there. I like to take this excess and fold it back so that the edge just meets the raw edge here, and then take my scissors and cut it like this. That way I know it's straight and it's got a nice 90-degree angle. So my tip is sewn off just a little bit there, so I could restitch that a little bit less deep so that tip isn't cut off, but I think I'll just leave it for now. Again, I like to finger press this seam, and you can see this point is pretty good. This one we've got a little bit excess showing, but the quilt police are not going to come and tell us that our points are not pointy, so don't worry about it too much. Now we've got the last 2 sides. The pillow top is all done here. We've got both borders all the way around it. So the next step is to lay it on a piece of batting, take it over to the sewing machine, and we're just going to edge stitch all the way around, and we're going to do a really careful 1/4 inch seam all the way around because that's going to be our guide for the next step. So let's take it over to the machine and get that done. The top is nicely laid out on here. You can pin it if you need to, but it clings to the batting pretty well. So I'm just using 1 layer of the Hobbs, and this is 80-20 batting, 80% cotton, 20% polyester, and this makes a nice background for the pillow here. So I'm using contrast color thread so that you can see where I'm stitching. So I'm going to just stitch this with a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. You want to go nice and straight. So it's all stitched down. I used a dark thread on the back because we need to see where that stitch line is for our next step. Now, if you like, you can quilt the pillow top now. You can quilt in the ditch. You can free motion quilt. You can put it on your long arm. For my pillow, I'm not even going to quilt it at all. I'm just going to have the patchwork showing. So for the back of the pillow, I'm using a piece that's just a little bit wider than the top, and these are both of the selvages here. So you need a piece that's about 18 inches. You need about a half a yard. And then split it along the middle so that you've got 2 half pieces here. So we're going to take our first back piece and we're going to fold it down about 4 inches. Then we're going to put this about 6 inches from the top. There's not to be exact. You do want it straight. You don't want it lined up crooked like that. So make sure that it is bigger than your top here, that it's extending down a little bit, nice and straight there. Now take your other piece where the selvage is, which is right here. That way you don't have a raw edge and it won't fray out. And we're going to put this about 2 inches beyond where that selvage is. So we've got a nice overlap. Get it nice and flat, put a few pins in it, and we're going to stitch all these layers, and we're going to stitch from the other side, which is why it's nice to have that contrast color thread, because we're going to want to stitch it now just inside this stitching line. Really, really straight, but just inside this stitching line. So let's take it back to the machine. So we're going to sew right inside here. Pivot at the corner. Be sure to move your pins before you sew over them. And just go all the way around. Last step is to trim off the excess batting and backing. So I'm going to just use my scissors and leave about 3/8 of an inch all the way around. When you get to the corner, just snip off some of that excess there. So trim all the way around. Now we can flip the pillow right side out. So we're just going to reach inside here, flip it right side out. Then you want to poke those corners out. I've got really strong fingernails, so I can get a nice point there. But there are tools you can use to get that square. So after the corners are pointed out, we want the edges to be somewhat ironed. So to get this flat, because it's kind of lumpy, go from the back side, squish it up so you've got about a 1/2 inch of the back showing, and just finger press that right along the edge, and then iron it flat with your hands. That gets that seam right in the middle. It just makes the pillow edge look a lot better. So what we're doing is we're getting that seam right in the middle there. And it lays flatter than when it's stuffed. So I'm going to do that all the way around the edge, and then I'm going to put a pillow in it. And that will be done. So it looks kind of lifeless without the pillow insert. So let's get the pillow and bring it to life. We've got all 3 variations of the pillow done. Here's the one I was sewing on. Got the purpley border and then a blue border. Turned out really, really nice. The next one, remember, we made kind of like a cross in the middle, and I switched the borders up. So I put the blue border on first and then the purple. For the last pillow, I went back to the purple border first, then the blue, but I made a flange on it. So this pillow is actually a 14-inch, whereas these other guys were 16-inch. So to make the flange, you make the pillow exactly the way I showed you, but when you're done, you stitch right around here. And then that part will lay flat for this nice flange look. So it's real easy to take the same patchwork, but get 3 different variations of blocks And these pillows would look so nice. I'd probably put that one in the middle or spread them around the room. But they're really fun to make, really simple. So 2.5-inch squares, half square triangles, couple of borders, and you're done. Thanks for watching.